Everybody, today I've decided to rebut the misleading statements made by Kent Hovind about his actually rightful conviction for tax crimes. So I'm going to go through the things that he has to say and stop the video and comment where appropriate. Let's go. He's saying that he's not a tax protester and never has been.
2 days from now, December 16th, is the anniversary of the American patriots dumping tea in the harbor over a big tax protest. I'm thrilled they did what they did. How many of you are glad they freed a free country to grow up in? Yeah, they did the right thing. Now, for the record, I am not a tax protester, never have been. I've always said if you owe a tax, you ought to pay it, okay? I've said...
Yes, if you owe a tax, and of course then the next question he says, well, he doesn't owe a tax. So that's the first misleading statement.
Hundreds of times, if you owe it, pay it. Is Kent Hovind a tax protester? Forbes magazine. Whoa, Peter Riley. An accredited university invites tax protester, creationist, and felon Kent Hovind to speak. Wikipedia, Kent Hovind, a fundamental evangelist and tax protester. Let's see. Kent Hovind, the ultimate grifter of the 2021 century. Really? Kent Hovind's mugshot. Unfortunately, creation science is not a crime. Fortunately, tax evasion is. They accused me of tax protesting, tax evasion, okay? Kent Hovind tax evasion case. Great series. Kent Hovind is innocent series. You ought to watch that, okay?
Yes, and who did that series? None other than Brady Byram, a member of his board, who got involved in all sorts of other little things, which we'll hear a little bit about later. It's not a factual case.
As of being a cult leader. Who is doing this? Let's see. Kent Hovind is a commune cult leader in Lenox, Alabama. Here we go. Prison clothes. There we go. Tribute to Kent Hovind. Are Kent Hovind's tax dollars funding teaching evolution?
I'm just going to interrupt real quick.
What?
This is from Matthew's birthday?
Well, this is very professional.
Wow. Thank you, ma'am. Later. Okay. There. So, what tax dollars are those, Kent? Bill Ludlow. Tax protester sues the government. Anybody who wears a hat on their head like that needs to be cautious listening to him. Kent Hovind, evangelist who apparently believes he doesn't owe taxes. Well, that's not true. Kent Hovind, tax protester. Tax fraud. Florida man gets his dinosaur park seized by the feds. Now, reported that Kent Hovind been battling the IRS for years. I didn't battle them. They came after me. Okay.
Well, they came after you because you weren't paying your taxes. What else are they meant to do? Everybody else pays.
Anyway, let's see. This guy's a tax expert. Oh, we better listen to him then. Okay. Matthew. I thought it was Matthew. Sorry about that. Thank you for the question.
I was wrong, Doc. You're right. It's Matthew.
It is Matthew. Okay. I think it's way past time I give a thorough answer. Since I moved to Lenox, April 2016, some have spread rumors that I'm a tax protester and various other bad labels, cult leader, etc., they put on me without knowing the entire truth. These same rumors prompted your question. It's a sad reality of living in a small community that some have nothing better to do than try to make themselves look good by tearing down what others build or do. Paul said in Acts 24, they neither found me in the temple disputing with any man, neither raising up the people, neither can they prove the things they accuse me of. It's okay to give a defense once in a while. They were accusing Paul of all kinds of things. He said, that's it. They can't prove any of this, okay? Acts 25, when he came to Jerusalem, when he was come, the Jews came down from Jerusalem, and they laid many and grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. And he answered for himself, neither against the law of the Jews, neither against the temple, nor yet against Caesar have I offended anything at all. It's okay to maintain your innocence if you're innocent. Okay. Since moving to Lenox, brought nearly $3 million of revenue into this area.
So what's that got to do with the fact you defrauded the government of tax? Doesn't matter how much you've brought to the area, supposedly.
With all the building we've done, 25,000 plus or minus visitors we've had from all 50 states and 75 foreign countries.
Totally irrelevant.
We have seen thousands of lives changed and nearly 270 baptized in our lake. But the rumors, gossip, and slander persist, calling us a cult. My answer to your question, Matthew, and this phase of my life starts with this woman, Judge Margaret Casey Rogers. Let me explain what happened, okay? Education and career. Margaret Rogers, born in Pensacola in the U.S. Army for 2 years, received a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of West Florida in 1989. That's the year I did my first, that's the year I moved to Pensacola and did the debate and humiliated the professor there. And I think somebody got a burr under their saddle. Anyway, let's see. July 14th, Rogers was nominated by President Bush to a seat in the U.S. State District Court for the Northern District of Florida. She became a judge in Pensacola. Vacated by Lacey Collio. Complaints Board. Okay, complaints about politicians. Here we go. Judge Margaret Casey Rogers, fraud warning. Beware of Judge Margaret Casey Rogers.
Yes. Who's posted this on this bogus site? Let's have a look.
Why? She's a bizarre individual who is completely unethical and biased in her rulings. Judge Rogers should be investigated and, when found guilty, confined to prison. This woman is completely unfit person to be a judge. She's biased against Christians and in favor of evildoers, as her record shows.
It's been posted by none other than freekenthovind.com. It's totally meaningless drivel.
Paid by taxpayers and yet is a public enemy. Beware of Judge Margaret Casey Rogers. To show how deranged she is she claimed that Pastor Kent Hovind's supposed offenses were worse than a rapist. Judge Margaret Casey Rogers sentenced Pastor to many years in prison for what doesn't even constitute a crime, and yet is on record for saying it's worse than a rapist.
No, that's not true. It's not on record at all, and Kent now claims that it was deleted from the record. And many people who have commented on this have said that it was, in fact, Kent's son Eric who mentioned something connected with the person that Kent just talked about, and that it was not Judge Rogers. Of course, all the Kentophiles on here are going along to try and back him up. There is no evidence whatsoever of that.
She illegally had this removed from the court transcript. 7 U.S. citizens heard her say this and have filed affidavits. She said at my sentencing, "Your crime is worse than rape. We paid for the court transcript, had to wait 16 months to get it, and it had been altered. This case should be overturned."
No, it hadn't. And stop lying, Kent. I mean, this is all just so convenient. You're always right and everybody else is wrong. It's not true.
She should be investigated and probably impeached, at least, okay? Anti-Christian judge presided over Kent Hovind, let's see, 20. In 2006, a government SWAT team raided Kent Hovind's Creation Science Ministry. Kent and his wife, Jo, got arrested at gunpoint. Jo was dragged out of bed and not allowed to get dressed. This violent method of arresting a suspect is usually reserved for hardcore gang-related activity. It was disproportionate.
It's also used where the person or the suspect is suspected of having guns on the property. And of course, you'll even know from Dino Land, his current place, he's not slow in saying that he's well armed. So I can't blame this group. He's also a little bit unhinged in some ways.
And a total over-the-top display of force. She was taken to the courthouse in her nightgown. They were both thrown in prison. Jo got released from jail a few years ago, but as of February 2015, Kent maintains his innocence from behind bars. A SWAT team coming after a Baptist preacher and his wife.
Yes, for not paying your taxes, you know. And as far as your wife goes, that's not really your wife, that's just a picture of her. You're the one that threw her under the bus, Kent. You're the one who got her put in prison. If you just paid your taxes and stopped structuring, then everything would have been fine.
Wife Jo and I were virgins on our honeymoon, faithful for 42 years.
And what's that got to do with the crime that you committed, Kent? Absolutely nothing. Pity you can't just stick to the topic.
When I got home from prison, she said, "I'm divorcing you. I'm scared of the IRS."
No, she said, "I'm divorcing you because you're never going to change, Kent." That's the reason she divorced you. Nothing to do with being scared of the IRS. It was all to do with you. And we've heard the tapes when you were in prison and talking to her, and you weren't going to change. You said maybe she had to change. And then she answered meekly, "Yes, sir. A broken woman." It's all on record, Kent. Stop lying.
I've never divorced a woman. I've never left a woman. I've never hit a woman, never body slammed a woman.
Yeah, just 3 of your wives have left you, and you've driven one of them in particular out. This is just nonsense. You're the only person I know whose brother and sister are estranged from him, whose son and daughter and grandkids are estranged from him, and many workers are estranged from you. But hey, it's never your fault, is it, Kent? Never.
Okay? It's all baloney. But she divorced me. What do? You move on, okay? Tag, well, Margaret Casey Rogers. Ever wonder why Kent's in prison? Margaret Rogers, quite an interesting character, has a reputation of issuing heavy-handed justice towards Christians. She received national attention in September 2009. She tried to send 2 Christian school teachers to prison for several years for, guess what? For praying. They were praying over their food in the cafeteria. She wanted to send them to prison for that. Hang on there. No prayers or religion in my town, she said, according to Washington Times. Okay, Margaret. Let's see. Lawmakers back officials facing jail for prayer. School prayer charges stir protests. Students, teachers, and local pastors are protesting over a court case involving a Northern Florida school principal and athletic director who are facing criminal charges and up to 6 months in jail for offering a mealtime.
Now, this is another lie of Kent, and you watch carefully how he doesn't read the last sentence there. And you will see that that it was on behalf of Pace High School principal Frank Lay and athletic director Robert Freeman, who will go on trial at a federal district court in Pensacola for breaching the conditions of a lawsuit settlement reached last year. So he agreed to a settlement and then he breached the settlement. That's what this is about, not the business of actually praying in public. He agreed after a lawsuit to desist that particular practice. Agreed. Signed a form, all settled, and then he reneges on it. But will Kent read that out? Oh, no. Listen.
And prayer. There have been yard signs, T-shirts, and mass student protests during graduation ceremonies this spring on behalf of Pace High School, which is a Pensacola suburb, Frank Lay, principal, and school athletic director Robert Freeman, who will go on trial September 17th at a federal district court. And guess who the judge was? Margaret Casey Rogers, okay?
So, as I told you, he left that last sentence out, which explains why he is being prosecuted. What a liar.
Prosecution of Kent Hovind was led by Michelle Heldmeyer, U.S. Attorney John David Roy Atchison, and U.S.
It was not led by Atchison. Atchison only filed some minor papers or documents or dockets after Kent was convicted. This is a convenient thing that he says, because what he's trying to do, he's trying to draw on the failings of some of these people and implying that therefore has an influence on the case when it has nothing to do with the case. This is typical Kent. And you've heard it before, telling you they were virgins on their honeymoon. Well, virgins on their honeymoon can still commit tax crimes. Oh.
Assistant U.S. Attorney. Judge Richard Kreidler committed suicide when he was caught and charged with the crime of purchasing illegal pornographic material. The following year, Michelle Heldmeyer, who one of the ones came after me, now the U.S. Attorney, made national news when it was found her husband, Joseph Heldmeyer, was on the same pornographic mailing list as the judge. He was never prosecuted. Attorney's actions warrant probe. Why? Because he's the husband of a U.S. attorney? Probably. Okay. A few days after Kent Hovind's trial, Assistant U.S. Attorney John David Roy Atchison was caught, arrested, and jailed for attempting to rape a 5-year-old. At Kent's trial, Margaret Casey Rogers, the presiding judge, allegedly said Kent Hovind's crime is worse than rape.
So now he's chucked in there allegedly. That's because, of course, she didn't say that. As I said, it's been indicated that Eric might have had something to say about that particular word, not the exact thing, and it's been taken by Kent and his supporters as a try and get out of jail card. Well, it's not going to work, Kent.
Here's a video by world-renowned and respected Dr. Greg Dixon, longtime friend of mine. And
of course, he has these longtime friends. He won't tell you about some of them, but I will as this goes on.
Indianapolis Baptist Temple, attesting that the entire courtroom heard the worse than rape remark. Did the judge know the prosecutor was a rapist? To appeal the case, Kent paid $6,000 for a full court transcript. Right away, as soon as I went to jail, we paid to get the transcript. To be valid, the appeal had to be filed within 12 months. The documents were held back for 16 months, making Kent miss the deadline for appealing his own case. 4 months after the deadline and too late to appeal, Kent finally received the transcript, and somebody had tampered with it, removing the judge's words, "worse than rape." 8 attendees of the court have signed an affidavit stating they heard Judge Margaret Casey Rogers declare Kent Hovind's crime to be worse than rape. Whoever tampered with the official court transcript is not known, but the fact alone that it was tampered with is enough to overturn the case.
Oh, what total rubbish. It wasn't tampered with. And of course, whether she said that or not, well, let's assume maybe she did. She didn't, but even if she did, that doesn't mean that he's not guilty or that it's enough to overturn the case. Kent is getting his legal advice from this Brady Byram guy. A lot of this stuff is probably written by him as well. And of course, Kent should be very careful talking about the prosecutor, the one that had a very minor role, who was convicted of terrible things against children, and it was just dreadful. But Kent is trying to use that as an excuse that somehow he's innocent. Well, he's not. And of course, Kent is friends with Brady Byram, one of his board members, who's written a lot of this rubbish that Kent's put up today. And guess what Brady did, according to Kent, with his own daughter? Anyway, enough of that at the moment. That'll come out. It's all on recording. Goodness me.
And what hideous, monstrous crime does the title "worse than rape"? Structuring. Not murder, not genocide, no, structuring. That's withdrawing any amount of your own money from your own bank. I'm not making this up. If you withdraw money from your bank more than twice within the last 10 years, then you're guilty of structuring.
No, that is just total rubbish. Okay, first of all, if you withdraw money in 10,000 or more, then in cash, the bank or the institution is required to report it to the government, because a lot of criminals, whether they be drug dealers or in fact church-type criminals, just trying to hide money and not pay taxes, it stops them in their tracks. But, of course, some of them are a bit clever. Kent thinks he was clever. He won't withdraw 10,000 or more in one day. He'll do just under, like 9,500. And it was multiple times. It wasn't just once or twice. And so to stop people getting around it that way, that's called structuring. And structuring to avoid the banks having to report those things is a crime. It's obvious and it's very easy to actually understand if you want to. But of course, Kent is conveniently ignoring this because he doesn't want to understand.
He served 8 years in prison for a nonsense, made-up crime. To recap, Assistant U.S. Attorney who prosecuted Kent was a rapist. The judge...
after the event, did file some dockets. And he was, but that had nothing to do with Kent's case.
Allegedly said Kent was worse than a rapist. The prosecutor then was found guilty of rape. Then the judge's statements about rape got removed from the court transcript.
No, they didn't. But because we're going to stop here, we'll have to come back with the next part shortly. Thank you.